Hello and welcome to the Facts Over Fandom show. I am your host, Professor Brandon Podgorski, Professor of Sport Leadership and Management, and happy Independence Day. Today is July 4th. I haven't done a video, I haven't done an episode in quite a few months. It's probably been over half of a year, and I love podcasting. It's kind of a hobby of mine, and I like blogging. I like writing articles. Life's just been busy. Work has been busy with my programs picking up, and that's been a blessing. And finally, at the end of my doctoral journey, I have my final defense here in 17 days. So just in busy with just with family and with other things, but yeah, I've just been moved. July 4th is one of my favorite holidays, and I think just for what it represents, for the independence of our country, for the liberties that we have, the freedoms that we have, and just the blessings that this country affords us. I've been very fortunate to be able to have traveled to a number of different foreign countries. I don't know, I'm somewhere 12, 13, 14, 15. And the experiences are great, and the people are great. And yeah, I love the fact that I've had the ability to travel to so many different places and different continents. But there's no place like home. I mean, there is no place like the United States. And on this holiday in particular, and our 250th birthday, I'm just always moved at just how good we have it, and how blessed by God that we've been. And I've just been particularly moved watching the World Cup, and not the games, but just the reactions from people coming from other countries to the United States. And I've spent quite a bit of time in Europe. Never lived there, but just on trips, and even working there for 3 summers for a few weeks. And just I know the reputation that we have with Europeans, and it's not great. I think they think we're a little bit unintelligent or stupid, to be honest, is what I've been called. They hear a lot on the media of the violence in our country, and some of the unrest, and certainly some of the things that we struggle with, which are factual. But then they come here and they experience it, and they experience just the bigness of the United States, the excess of the United States, which I don't think we necessarily have to apologize for, and the kindness that you find here, and certainly, I'm getting close to travel to all 50 states. Yeah, we've got our issues, and we've got our warts just like anywhere else, and certainly we need to work towards overcoming those. But I've just found the kindness of Americans to be second to none, and I'm just so thankful to live in this country. But as I'm watching the World Cup and the reactions to people being here, um, seeing different internationalities and interacting with Americans and the fun that they're having. I mean, we've got what the guy Freddie is coming, and just he couldn't believe Waffle House. He couldn't believe Bucky's, and that turns into like a suite from JJ Watt. It turns into a visit to the White House. A guy that I've had on as a guest from another podcast, Jake Crane, who was on the Daily Wire on Crane and Company, and now he's moved to On Three with Crane and Cone, and hosts a sports talk show. He posted a video today, and it was out of New England, and I think a German fan was in Boston for a game, and I don't know exactly what happened. He couldn't get home. He couldn't get back to his hotel. He couldn't get an Uber, or he lost his wallet, or something. And he starts weeping. And, just a random guy from Boston, a guy named Bob's like, "Hey, man, what's wrong? What do you need?" And he explains the situation. He's like, "Hop in my car. Let's go. I got you." And he just takes him to his hotel. And he was just overcome, because I think, like a lot of people internationally, and certainly Europeans, he just kind of had a bad negative perspective of what America was. And then he encounters this hospitality. And I think even here in our own country, we tend to think from people of the Northeast a little bit more hostile or aggressive. But he meets this guy who didn't know him from Adam, and just picks him up, takes him to his hotel, in an act of gratitude, and he was just overcome. I mean, you could tell in the interview he was overcome, and he just loves this country and is kind of sad to go back home. Not that he doesn't love Germany, I'm sure that he is, but he just found the perception didn't match the reality. And so as watching these games and I'm seeing the viewing parties, and somebody made a video. It was, you may have seen it. It's been trending on X. It was about a 5 minute music video, and they were putting together and spicing together just different foreigners' reactions and to being in the United States during the World Cup. And the video, the music was something. The title was like "Land of the Free," something like that. But it was just, I think it was AI created too. But it was really, really cool. I promise, really, really cool. If you can find it, check it out. John Buchacross from ESPN, he's been retweeting it. So go check out Bucci and see this video. But it's really, really cool because they took all these videos of people from the United States and made it into like this country song, and just you see all these people coming together, and it just made me think, I'm a man of faith. I teach at a Christian institution, and I'm in my mid 40s, but in my early 20s, I gave my life over to the Lord, and I can't separate that. My relationship with God is the most important thing in my life, and then my family and friends, and then work and everything else. But I can't separate that. I can't separate faith from fandom. And so as I'm watching the World Cup and I'm seeing people come together, and even in some of the losses, just fans still, like I think Argentinian players were consoling Cape Verde players after they almost upset Argentina, one of the best teams in the country. I see God. I just see God working in this gift of sports to bring us together. There's so much that tries to drive us apart and try to drive a wedge between us. I mean, just watch the news, get on social media. I mean, you can see all the things that pull us apart, but God has given us this gift of sports and this way to bring people together through the love of this institution, right? Or this team or this organization. And certainly we got to keep it in perspective. It doesn't mean that we need to elevate sports above other things in our life or to be the most important part in our life. And I try to keep that in perspective as somebody who works in the industry and loves this industry and who has a son that plays sports. I first have to be driving him to Christ. But boy, we've got this amazing gift that we can see God through sports. So that's just what I wanted to talk about in today's episode. And as I write this blog post, are just kind of five themes or five things that I've seen, maybe 5 points I've seen through this World Cup and how I see God working. So, if I had to kind of boil it down, is that sports are not just entertainment. They're one of God's common graces that allows people to come together from every tribe, language, nation, and background to experience fellowship. So if you go all the way back to Genesis, one of the first books in the Bible, and God makes the earth. And Genesis 1:31, he said, God saw all that he had made, and it was good. And then there was evening, and then there was morning, and that was the sixth day, right? And so athletic competition, it wasn't created by ESPN. It wasn't invented by Nike. The Olympics, they have their roots in pagan festivals, but all of this creative outlet through sports was God ordained. God gave us these capabilities to build sports, to build institutions, to build the ESPNs, and to build the Nike, and to build all these things up off athletic accomplishments. So I think the first thing I want to start with is that sports should remind us we are created for relationship. Right? I remember this is now going on 10 years, but my wife and I, when we first moved up to Northeast Indiana, and I was a professor starting a job up there, we were house hunting. And I don't know if we were like we were renting at the time, and so we weren't like particularly serious. But I was ready to get out of our apartment and ready to get into a house. I don't know if I was ready to break a lease, but I wanted to at least see what we could afford. And we go to an open house, and there's this young realtor there, really young guy, and we just struck up a conversation, and turns out he was a Cubs fan. Yeah, I'm a huge Cub fan, as I've explained in my writings and in previous episodes. And we leave there, and we're talking about the Cubs, and I was mad because they gave up a game the night before, I think the bullpen, and this is on the heels of them just winning the World Series, and we leave there, and I'm like, hey, sweetheart, that's our realtor, and let's just go ahead and buy a house from him. And we did. And so, I'd like to think that I'm a little smarter and have a little bit more intelligence and just buying and getting into a 30-year commitment, more than just because somebody likes my favorite baseball team. However, it's just kind of how it worked out. There was that relationship between the Cubs, and we established that relationship. And then we kind of become friends, and all of a sudden that leads into him becoming our realtor. And it just kind of reminds me of, I think of the book of Ecclesiastes, and in chapter 4, verses 9 through 10, and Ecclesiastes is fast becoming one of my favorite books of the Bible, just because I kind of envision it being written by a guy like my age, a middle-aged guy who's kind of a cynic. But in chapter 4, it says, two are better than one. Because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Think about that through sports, right? And not all sports are team sports. Some are individual. Let me talk about that in a minute. But think about that through sports. Think about the teammates who have picked you up in the past. Think about fans who may have patted you on the back after a tough loss, right? Think about the tailgates. We're getting close to football season. You can almost smell it. We're 2 months away, right? The tailgates that you go to before a game, and just how that fellowship brings people together, right? Pick up basketball. I ended up joining a fraternity in college because I was playing some pickup basketball at one of the gyms at IU, and happened to play with some guys, and man, we crushed everybody that day. We had a great day. But we were playing some 3-on-3 pickup basketball, and then we went our merry ways. And then it was a party later that night, or a few days later, and bumped into them, and it's like, oh man, wasn't that so much fun? And we crushed everybody. Hey, I want you to beat this guy, this guy, this guy, and ended up joining that fraternity. Right? Or just the you're a parent, and the other parents that you're in little league with, or you're in football with, or soccer with, and you become friends, or maybe you're travel teams and you guys go stay at hotels or whatever that is, right? We've got somebody there along for the ride. And so the Bible's telling us that we need fellowship, and we need relationship, and we need people there for us. And isn't that what sports is? Even if you're in an individual sport, you got a coach that's pushing you. You got parents who are supporting you. You got fans who are supporting you, right? That's just the beauty of sport right there. Point two that I thought of is that sports also helps to break down barriers. Right? We've got fans in this country from Brazil, Mexico, Japan, England, Morocco, United States, everywhere in between, right? All cheering together. And I thought about the story of Peter and Cornelius in Acts 10. And so if you go to Acts 10, Peter and Cornelius, Peter obviously one of Jesus' disciples, and God orchestrates this meeting between Peter and Cornelius to break down a lot of the deep-seated ethnic and culture barriers that were happening at the time, especially between Jews and Romans. And, it proves that the gospel message, it's universal. It unites people from all nations on equal ground. In the story in Acts 10, it unfolds through a series of divine visions, and they're designed to overcome prejudice and unite two completely different worldviews. And think about just some of that we deal with today in the United States, right? And so Cornelius, he's a Roman military officer, so he's a Gentile. Okay. And so Jesus came as a Jew, but his message was not just for the Jews, but it was also for the Gentiles, for the unbelievers. And you think about Roman military officers or soldiers and just a lot of the hardship that they inflicted on the Jews at the time. So you have Cornelius. And he was actually a devout man, though. And he prayed and he actually gave to the poor. So this is the guy who was not acting like a traditional Roman soldier, but he was completely excluded from Jewish religious fellowship. Again, there was a schism between Jews and Gentiles. And an angel appeared to him and he instructed him to send messengers to Joppa to bring back Peter. Okay. And so while Cornelius's men were traveling, Peter, again, he was a Jewish and one of Jesus's disciples. He had a vision. He was on a rooftop and he had a vision. And he saw this sheet descending from heaven, and it was filled with animals that were traditionally considered unclean by Jewish law. And a voice commanded him to eat, but he refused. And God replied to him, "What God has cleaned, you must not call common." And so he repeated that lesson 3 times to emphasize its importance. All right, remember that. So stick with me, okay? And so as Peter pondered that vision, Cornelius's men had arrived to him. And the Holy Spirit came to Peter and he told him, push past that strict Jewish custom of not entering a Gentile's home. And so upon arriving to Caesarea, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, Peter realized the true meaning of the vision, that God was teaching him never to call any person unclean. And Peter says, "I now realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism, but accepts from every nation the one who fears him and does what is right." And so as Peter preached this message to the Gentiles gathered in Cornelius' home, the Holy Spirit fell upon them and they were baptized. And so you have this inclusive moment that officially welcomed the Gentiles into the early Christian community and uniting Jews and people of all nations as one. So again, I'm not preaching a sermon, but I am trying to show that sports are a vehicle that God can use to unite people because that's his vision. We're supposed to be in community. We're supposed to be united. We're not supposed to be divided. So that was the second point. Point 3 is that sport teaches virtues that Scripture celebrates. So sports teaches us all these great things that we read in the Bible. And I'm going to use Bible right now. I'm a Christian, but I'm going to use Bible as more of kind of a catch-all term, as for kind of a Judeo-Christian point of view. That sports, thinking about the Old Testament and the New Testament, that sports teach perseverance, humility, sacrifice, discipline, teamwork, servant leadership, courage. I mean, Paul, again, one of Jesus's disciples, he used athletic metaphors a number of times in the New Testament. 1 Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians 9, he emphasizes self-discipline and focus. Paul compares Christians to runners and boxers, urging believers to run with intentionality and self-mastery rather than just beating the air, just all for an imperishable crown of righteousness from God. So, our life, our walk with God is created or is compared to those like runners and boxers, right? Run your race, train, fight your spiritual fight, just the same way that those building their bodies in athletics do. In Hebrews 12, and this is a famous one for endurance athletes, especially runners. I've got my wife; all her running medals are hung up, and it has this verse on this hanger, and it focuses on endurance. So Christians were exhorted to run a long distance race by shedding the weight of sin and looking past the spectators and keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. And then the third time that Paul does this is in 2 Timothy in chapter 4, where he celebrates completion, right? Looking back on his life, and it's one of my favorite verses. Paul uses the imagery of finishing a race and fighting a good fight to express his victory and remaining faithful to the end, all the way to the end of his life, just remaining faithful in his Christian victory and using sports as that metaphor to do that. Right. So athletics, it illustrates that spiritual truth that we saw. Remember those things I talked about: perseverance, humility, sacrifice, discipline, teamwork, servant leadership, courage. You need all those to live a good spiritual life. And we can find that in sports. And so sports can become those discipleship opportunities. I see it. You see it with like CYO, upward sports. I'm sure there's other things, Jewish Community Center. I'm sure there's other things that I'm missing. But again, sports can be used as a vehicle. The YMCA for our spirit, our mind, and our body. Point 4, sports help reveal God's creativity. Right? Think about the creativity guy. So I'm outside. It's July 4th. My son's over at a splash pad, which is why I'm doing this outside. And I'm just looking around, and I see blue sky. There's a few clouds, but boy, they're fluffy and they're white. I see this green grass. I see willows over here. I got trees over here. And it's just beautiful. We got a little bit of water. We got a pond. You got frogs. You got all this diversity of life, and we have this diversity of sports. So that's why I'm such an advocate on kids being multi-sport athletes. Help them find what it is that they enjoy and they're able to invest into. Different strategies in sport. Maybe you want to run a man-to-man or a zone defense. Right? Well, we kind of got different strategies in life too, and how we want to live life. Just different body types. I was in Japan at the end of February, beginning of March, to run the Tokyo Marathon, and got to view a little bit of sumo wrestling. And so, you couldn't have two different things. If you had me stand next to one of the sumo wrestlers, okay, I'm a tall, long, skinny guy next to these guys who are 500 pounds, right? But again, that's just kind of God's creativity, where He made some of these people to be offensive linemen or sumo wrestlers, and He made guys like me be able to run a long way. Right? That's cool, and we still get to participate in something that we love. Just different gifts that we have. Some of us were meant to be coaches. Some of us were meant to be maybe team managers. Some of us were meant to do stats. Some of us were meant to be the one who goes up and hits the home run in the bottom of the ninth. Right? We all play a different role in life. Some people run. Some people throw. Some people catch. Some people like to organize. Um, my wife, God bless her, she's had to be a teen mom a number of times, but that's her gift. Her gift is to help organize. Okay, here's the order of kids when they need to bat or when they need to come into the basketball game, and my gift is to actually coach them. Right? Some people sell tickets. Some are in marketing. Some are in accounting and finance. Some are pulling tarp. Some are in the concession stand, right? But everybody contributes, right? Everybody contributes. And I think about First Corinthians chapter 12. And again, we're looking at Paul and Paul's teaching and what he's using in chapter 12. He's talking about how he uses the human body to explain how the church should function. So just as a physical body, we have many distinct parts working together. We're all unified as one organism, right? Diverse members of the church, of your synagogue. Everybody has their spiritual gifts, but we're interconnectedly and we're equal. We're essentially equal, right? Or we're equally essential would be a better way to put it. Same thing in sports. Again, sports reflecting just kind of the creativity of God, where you need everybody in your organization to come together and work hard for a goal. Right? And it's the same way in church. Everybody brings in different gifts. Like, I wish I could sing. I wish I could be up there. I cannot carry a tune in a bucket. You do not want to hear me try to sing. But I bring other things that I can use to help the church, right? Whether it would just be leadership capabilities, the ability to volunteer and help with maybe things of a strategic nature, or I've been on a board of a church and help with finances. Like, that's my gift, right? And we all need that to make our organizations function. And then the last point that I thought about is that just sports points us beyond ourselves, right? So sometimes fandom can be dangerous when we let sports become our identity and we've made a good thing into an ultimate thing. Sports make terrible gods, but wonderful gifts. So there's a huge difference. Okay? So we can use sports. Again, I think God gives us this gift of sports, and we should use it to unite us. Only Christ can truly reconcile us as people. Right? The Bible tells us every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. But There's no but there. Only we can be reconciled in Him. But He gives us these opportunities. And I guess what I'm saying is don't squander it. He gives us sports, He gives us the arts, He gives us family, He gives us friends, He gives us Independence Day in this great country to come together and unite. And I think there's a whole lot more that unites us than divides us. And so I guess that's what I want to leave you with. So if you've listened to the show before, you know I love talking about the business of sports and sports leadership. But I think every once in a while it's important to step back and remember why all this stuff matters. Sports is more than a business, it's more than entertainment, it's more than wins and losses. Every little league field, every neighborhood basketball court, you can hear somebody's on the basketball court here, you probably hear the basketball in the background, right? Every soccer field, all right, every soccer pitch, I'll give you that one. Every baseball stadium. It's just another place where God allows people to experience community, joy, excellence, friendship, hope. That's a gift. So as we celebrate our independence on this July 4th, and we celebrate the freedoms that we've been blessed with in America, I'm just so thankful that we also live in a place where people from around every corner of the world, they can come together through something as simple as a soccer game, soccer match. Sorry, soccer match. So maybe that's just one more reminder that while sports can't save us, they can still point us to God who created us for fellowship. So with that, I'll leave you with my sign off. Love God, love each other, be a good sport. I'll see you next time.